from the All Indiana Podcast Network.
It's time for real conversation about the real issues that affect our communities.
Poverty, education, equality, and more.
This is Real Talk.
Real Talk with Reverend Charles Harrison.
Welcome to Real Talk on the All Indiana Podcast. I am Reverend Charles Harrison, and on this episode, I will be talking with Joe Garrison, who is one of the co-founders of the North Shadeland Alliance. And several months ago, they held a public safety forum at Castleton United Methodist Church with current prosecutor Ryan Mears and his challenger Cindy Carrasco. We will be talking on today's episode about the Marion County prosecutor's race in Indianapolis. Hello, welcome to Real Talk with Reverend Charles Harrison. This is my pleasure today to have a very special guest. I happen to walk with him almost every Tuesday with the North Shadeland Alliance in the 75th and Shadeland area. We walk the Lake Castleton Apartments, and I happen to be a part of the North Shadeland Alliance Crime Summit 2, their public safety forum, in September. I think it was September the 20th, and they had at that forum Ryan Mears, the current prosecutor, and Cindy Carrasco, who is currently running against him. So, Joe, welcome to Real Talk with Reverend Charles Harrison.
Hey, thanks for having me back. Appreciate it.
Well, listen, let's talk a little bit about the forum. I happened to attend that night, so I was sitting in the audience, and I was there for part of it. But talk a little bit about that forum, what you tried to accomplish, and what was your observations?
Yeah, so our thought really going into it was that really just the few of us that were in the North Shadeland Alliance had a lot of questions ourselves about the candidates and kind of some of the stuff we were seeing online about one or the other. And so we thought, why not see if we can, sit them down and ask them some questions and make it a community thing like we did the year before with our first crime summit. So really we wanted to make it all about the community and give people, just average folks, the chance to ask their questions of these two candidates of what is really an important office, an important race this year. And so we solicited those questions online and kind of boiled them down to about 10 or 12 themes of questions that were repetitive in the submissions, and had a moderator ask them of both candidates. And throughout the evening, we walked through about as many questions as our moderator could get through, and both candidates, for the most part, answered them pretty straightforward. So.
What were some of the questions that you saw as y'all was going through that most people were asking about, this whole issue? And I know in Indianapolis that the whole crime and violence issue seems to be probably the top issue this year in this election. What were some of the questions that, people were asking?
Sure. I mean, a lot of it, if you paid any attention to the race, a lot of it ends up being some of the talking points that either candidate has kind of thrown out. We know Ryan Mears has specifically made stances on how he's going to handle abortion cases and, issues with marijuana possession, those kind of things. So we had a lot of questions on that, how you'd handle that, both candidates. We had questions talking about the so-called revolving door of crime and, why people might be getting out on bail easier than some would like. So there's a lot of questions on that. We had questions related to the Fraternal Order of Police vote of no confidence that happened a couple months ago. So there were some questions around that. And then just some general, how would you handle the office? What do you think about turnover? What do you think about, retaining the best talent for the office and maybe bringing back some people that they might have lost over the last couple of years? And really a wide variety of questions that were posed to the candidates.
Well, most of the people that attended this crime summit, were they from that part of the city, in that North Shadeland Alliance area? And I was just wondering, what your viewpoints are about how people in that part of the city kind of view the crime and violence that is occurring, particularly in the urban core in the city.
Sure. Yeah, I think we had a good, swath of people from around the city at the event. There was definitely a good chunk of people from our immediate community, but unlike the previous year, the Crime Summit was very focused on our little corner of Indy. This year, since it is a county-wide race, we decided to open it up and did a little more advertising outside of our area to try to really get a broader sense of the questions that people around Marion County are asking. So that resulted in some, turnout from other parts of the city. We had folks from the south side and the west side and things like that might not have shown up if it was just for our community. But so, a great turnout there as far as people around the city. As far as what people think about all of it in this area, I think it kind of spans the spectrum a little bit. I would definitely say a lot of people are maybe not entirely aware of what's going on. You might catch on the news here and there, and a clip online or a tweet somewhere about the crime rate or the homicide rate, or this month specifically has been a rough month for homicides. So there's been more content out there about it. You might catch some of that, but I think there's a chunk of people that are probably not paying a whole lot of attention. And I think it's pretty split on whether, at least as far as what people would like to see about it, the ones that are paying attention. I mean, there's a lot of people that might, lean towards more what Cindy Carrasco might be saying, and, we need more accountability and, kind of fix the so-called revolving door. But there's a lot of people that, support, Ryan Mears' stances on abortion and, marijuana use and lower level crimes not being, dealt with as harshly. So, it's kind of split the way I talk to people.
One of the questions that I often get asked is, is the urgency about the crime and violence in the city. The city is now in its third year, consecutive year, probably going to be over 200 plus homicides. So, in the last 10 years, we have seen a dramatic increase in shootings, stabbings, murders, and homicides in the city. But Joe, I'm not for sure that the urgency about it is, all over the county, particularly the Indianapolis area, because it doesn't affect certain areas of the city like it does other areas. So I wonder, if people are I wouldn't say numb about it, but maybe they are, or they just don't feel the urgency that other parts of the city does.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think this area probably felt more urgency last year when we did have 7 homicides at the corner of 75th and Shadeland. That was a lot. And that's why we did our initial crime summit, is we could, you could cut the tension with a knife. It was thick and people, were feeling it, and there was some fear and anxiety there. This year we've, aside from, one homicide at a hotel and a hotel room down the street, there's not been a lot that's gone on over here. It's been a good year, and that's what we want, but it definitely, there's a little out of sight, out of mind, I think, with a lot of people. And, you and I have talked before, if it doesn't, if something doesn't impact my individual ability to survive and thrive, individual people, then we're less likely to see that as an urgent issue. So I don't feel necessarily the sense of urgency like we might have last year when we had our own wave in this little part of town. But, beyond that, I think it goes to, unfortunately, probably more political talking points. If you're a little more right-leaning, you're going to be more, riled up about crime. And if you're a little more left-leaning, maybe not. Kind of defaults to the, party stances a little bit, the different sides. So.
Well, that's probably really true, and probably what I have noticed too. What do you think about the race overall? I think most people, I'm kind of torn as to what to do. Has been a lifelong Democrat myself, but consider myself a moderate Democrat. But certainly, I'm concerned about what I perceive is kind of the broken judicial system when it comes to repeat violent offenders. But I think some of the things I have heard is I think there are people who feel like that is a problem, but the concern has been whether or not I think Cindy's position would result back into what some people are concerned about is, kind of trying to jail your way out of this problem. What are you kind of hearing out there when it comes to, her talking point of accountability? Are there concerns? Or has she done a good job of explaining the difference between nonviolent offenders and violent offenders that need to be held accountable?
Yeah, I think, for the most part, Democrat or Republican, everybody understands that at or around 200 homicides a year is not okay. I think everybody mostly agrees on the fact that that's too much. And even at the Crime Summit, I think both candidates were pretty honest about, this year, while you might say statistics are better, this is not good enough. But they obviously have very different strategies for how they think, they should deal with it or solve it. As far as, Cindy Carrasco's campaign goes, I wonder if they've done enough to specifically talk about what she means when she talks about more accountability. I think a lot of people, I've seen years and years and years of people being locked up for low-level crimes, and maybe even specifically people of color being locked up at higher rates for low-level crimes. And so that makes a lot of people nervous when they hear, more accountability. Are we just going to see people getting locked up more? And maybe more specifically, are we going to see more people of color being locked up more? And, I think, at times I've heard her say, be more clear about what she means by more accountability. I think she's said a lot more, it is the more violent offenders. We got to make sure these violent people are not on the streets and not getting back on the streets after they commit violent acts. But it's difficult. People hear what they want to hear. And unfortunately, when, you're in a campaign, you have to say something about 5 million times before people actually listen. And I think she might, be kind of getting hit by that a little bit. And that I don't know that message of, I don't think she's necessarily talking about, low-level pot smokers that they're going to get locked up and throw away the key. That doesn't seem to be her strategy. But, it's easy to pit that against her, the extra talk about accountability. I think it's easy to mistake what she might be saying. So
what is Prosecutor Mears' strategy to address the violence problem, other than I think he's been clear that he's not going to prosecute women who get an abortion, or the doctor, and I guess that's applaudable, but I haven't really heard anything about, maybe I've missed it, about how he's going to address this issue of helping to reduce the violence from the prosecutor's office, because, a lot of the beat rank and file police officers feel like the broken judicial system is the major cause for the dramatic increase in violence.
Yeah. I think he actually might be suffering from a little bit of the same messaging problems that Carrasco's campaign is, just vice versa. She's maybe suffering a little bit from people not really being able to digest or understand what she means when she talks about accountability and low-level offenders and things like that. I think on the reverse side, most of the stuff that, we see, you and I paid relatively good attention to things in this area. And, most of what I think we see from him is more focus on, abortion and marijuana and the things that he won't do, and, not prosecuting, over prosecuting people on lower level crimes, which that's fine. I've got nothing against. And, but when it comes to what are we going to do about these violent offenders, I have seen him talk, maybe even more recently. I think he's been putting out more about tackling violent crime. But you're right. I'm not sure that I could pinpoint anything specific to say, here's the specific strategy that I can think of. Yeah.
Are you more hopeful? I know you have really been involved, through the North Shadeland Alliance and trying to address the issue of crime and violence. Are you more hopeful, not just for the North Shadeland area, but overall in the city, that police and law enforcement and the courts and the prosecutor can come together around a strategy and the numbers can dramatically go down under 200? Or are we at a place where is 200 plus homicides now the new norm for Indianapolis?
I hope it's not. I don't know. It's hard to answer that question. I think we're at a point now where the rhetoric between the different groups, courts, police, maybe specifically FOP and the prosecutor's office, has gotten so heated and so so much animosity in it that it might be hard to bridge those gaps anytime soon and come together and really find commonalities and common ground on where they can move forward. I would hope they can. They're grown people and grown adults, and put the rhetoric and talking points and Twitter threads aside, and I'd love to see people sit down together and find some common ground and move us somewhere in the right direction. But it's hard to see that happening, honestly, and any time in the near future. And unfortunately, that may mean that 175, 200, 225 is our normal for a while. I don't know.
Certainly that is concerning, and I'm not for sure either. I think probably in my 29 years of being in Indianapolis, living here, I've not seen the kind of animosity between the prosecutor's office and the FOP law enforcement community. I don't know what the answer is there when it comes to how do we. Because I'm not for sure that if they don't come together, I'm not for sure we can dramatically impact this violence, in a way where we see the numbers go down. And I'm probably more concerned that in the future they may go up more. And I hope we never reach the number of 300 homicides a year.
Let's hope not.
Yeah, I hope not. Tell me a little bit about what's going on with the North Shadeland Alliance and what's happened over the last year. And I was with you the other night in the rain. And
in the rain?
Yeah, we did a walk. Talk a little bit about what's going on with the North Shadeland Alliance, and for people who don't know much about it. And I think y'all have accomplished a lot in the last couple of years.
Sure. Yeah. Just a quick flyover for folks that might not have heard of us. We're up on the northeast side in the North Shadeland Avenue area between 82nd and Fall Creek Road. We've been around for a couple of years, and kind of the inciting incident for us was a homicide in the area at a Subway shop that kind of just was the culmination of things we saw going in the wrong direction. So a few of us got together and, they'd been doing some things in the community and just kind of asked ourselves, how can we help? And what can we do personally? And the North Shadeland Alliance was born there at a little coffee shop down the street. Over the last couple of years, we've, focused a lot on public safety. We also try to focus a lot on, talking about the good things that are happening in the community too, because as bad as the homicides and the crime and stuff like that are, there's still good things happening. But unfortunately, a lot of our focus has been public safety, and we've held a couple crime summits. You were part of our first one, and this last one with the prosecutor candidates. And last year, you and I have been doing public safety walks at Lake Castleton Apartments, which had several homicides last year. And knock on wood, we have none this year. So we're moving in the right direction. But we just continue to work with, our local city councilors and churches and groups and, the apartment complex and all that, just to try to continue to bring a little more safety to the area. Our idea is just everybody deserves to have a safe place to live and work and play and worship. And, we're hoping to make that a little more likely. But,
Joe, there's a lot of neighborhoods, in the city, who want to try to help address the problem of crime and violence in their neighborhood. Mm-hmm. What would you suggest to them in how to do that so that they can make their neighborhood a little safer? Because I think a lot of people don't feel like much can really be done. Particularly those areas who may have experienced violence over a long period of time, and they kind of throw their hands up in the air just accepting what they feel is the reality that, violence is something that's going to continually be a part of the neighborhood that they live in?
Yeah, I mean, first thing I would say is, find out what you're good at and then find a way to utilize that for your community. When we all came together, one person was more involved, and my partner Chris was more involved in kind of the civic side of community relations, and she'd been involved in different things like that. I come from a marketing perspective, so a lot of what I do is in the marketing side, and we have other people that have other strengths, and really we just kind of utilize those strengths on our end. We try to build a coalition around things, and the more people you have involved, the better you're going to get. So sometimes using some of those relational things and marketing tools to build that group around you is the way you get that done. I don't think we'd be able to do half of what we do if we weren't, building an audience online and kind of doing those things that you kind of roll your eyes at these days, email lists and marketing and all that kind of stuff. But if you want to get stuff done, you got to bring people together. And there's a lot of ways to do that. I just happen to be in marketing and use those tools for that. But, the more people you have together that are working for a common cause, the more likely you are to get something done. But whatever you're good at, figure out a way to use that and be okay with slow growth.
Well, you do that very well. What about talk a little bit about the public safety walks that you have been doing, and I've been joining you with those, and a lot of times it's just me and you, but sometimes others join us. Yeah, it's been good. Whether it's you and me or a group of people, we always have great conversations. That's for sure.
So it's been a little over a year now. We started middle of October of 2021, and we spend about 45 minutes to an hour just walking around the complex. And each week is a little different. Some weeks there'll be several people out, and we'll get to talk to people. People will stop by and talk to us, and sometimes it's just thanks for doing this. Sometimes people want to talk and vent a little bit and talk about their concerns. We've had a couple times where people have come up with some issues, and I've been able to follow up with them later and get them some assistance on things. And, some weeks we don't see a soul, and it's just you and me walking around having a good conversation. So, but I think the biggest thing of it is it's a huge complex. And while a lot of people probably don't even know we're there, there's a lot of people that do know we're there and, have said, hey, I've never actually seen, come out and talk to you, but I see you there every single week. And I think that just presence and consistency, I think it helps as far as, letting people that might do, bad things, let them know, like, hey, there's other people watching, there's other people around and keeping an eye on things. And even, maybe even above that, it just lets the residents there know, like, hey, there's people that care and people that are looking out for us, and maybe gives them a little peace of mind as well. So.
Yeah, that is so true. We had one exciting incident, though. I was telling someone that I've been doing this for 23 years, and that probably I think is the second time that as I was walking, I heard gunshots, and someone did get shot. I think they waited for us to get around the corner. Yeah. We were about 75 to 100 feet away, just around the corner of the building, so we couldn't see the actual shooting happen. But we definitely heard it. Yep, we certainly did. Well, Joe, thank you so much for joining me today on Real Talk and for having this conversation. And thank you so much for really the work that you and the rest of the committee in the North Shadeland Alliance that you are doing. You're doing a lot of outstanding work, and it's people like you all across Indianapolis that are really making a difference in the neighborhood. So thank you so much for joining me today. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. You're doing amazing things in the city, and we all appreciate your voice and your experience and your help and partnership. So thank you very much, and appreciate you having me on again. All right. Thank you. I just wanted to end the show today with a little commentary. I have been in Indianapolis now for 29 years. It'll be 30 years in June. And probably this is, I think, the most important prosecutor's race, I think, in my 29 years of being in Indianapolis. I think the issues are there before us. I am concerned, I must say, about the broken judicial system. And I know a lot of people have a lot of different opinions and viewpoints as to how we can fix this. I certainly believe that we have to get everyone around the table, from the prosecutor to the courts, to law enforcement, the FOP, community leaders, and really begin to talk about how do we address the issue of violent crimes. Most police officers on the streets really believe that it has been what they call catch and release of the most violent offenders in the city that has created what they see is this dramatic surge in shootings, stabbings, murders, and homicides across the city of Indianapolis. I certainly believe that people are more fearful in more areas of the city than I have seen in my 29 years here. And certainly, I think the violence is much more widespread in Indianapolis than at any time that I could recall living here in the city. And that's the reason I believe that this prosecutor's race is so important this year. I'm hoping that Democrats and Republicans and independents alike will listen to both Prosecutor Ryan Mears and his challenger, Cindy Carrasco, and listen to their solutions, their strategies to address the issue of this crime and violence in the city. It's not just the violence, it is the crime itself. And in certain areas of the city, we're seeing a devastating economic impact on neighborhoods, particularly in the urban core, with businesses closing altogether or having to close early because of the fear of the crime that is taking place. And a lot of times that tends to be robbery. So a lot of these businesses are having a hard time getting employees, keeping employees, and certainly getting employees to work at nighttime. So because a lot happens at night, a lot of the stores are being forced to close early. Some may not have the money to provide the kind of security that is needed, so they close early. And I believe that has a dramatic impact on the neighborhoods in which these businesses are located. So when it comes to this whole crime and violence issue, it's not just the shootings, the stabbings, and the homicides and murders, but it's the overall crime that is plaguing the city of Indianapolis. And my concern is that it could even get worse. That's why I think it's important that we make sure that both Ryan Mears and Cindy Carrasco fully articulate their strategy, their solutions to help bring down the level of crime and violence that we're seeing in Indianapolis. And I think those of us who are residents of this city have an obligation to each other, that we ought not to just vote on party lines because one candidate is a Democrat, I'm going to vote for that person, or the other candidate is a Republican, and because I'm a Republican, I'm going to vote for that person. But I really believe that all of us have to evaluate these two candidates, listen very closely to their platform, to their solutions to help drive down the level of violence. And then we should make our choice based on what we hear and what we believe is in the best interest of all of Indianapolis. I believe that I am my brother's keeper. I believe that I am my sister's keeper. And I believe that we owe it to each other. Whether you live in a part of the city that is experiencing a high level of violence, or you live in another part of the city that doesn't experience much violence at all, your vote is important because how you vote will also impact individuals who live in these high crime areas year after year and who experience high levels of violence. I believe we owe it to all of the victims of violence and their families of individuals whose loved ones have been killed. If these families are going to experience closure and real justice, then we have to make sure that we make these neighborhoods safer, reduce the level of violence, and help our law enforcement solve these unsolved murders so that these families can have justice and peace. I believe we owe it to every resident of Indianapolis, regardless of where you live at. We owe it to them to do our part to make sure they live in safe and peaceful neighborhoods like we might. So I'm asking all of Indianapolis, all of Marion County, when you vote this November, I'm asking you not to vote based on party lines or party affiliations, but I'm asking you to really evaluate Ryan Mears and Cindy Carrasco. Listen to what they're saying. Listen to their platform, and then make the decision which one of these candidates you feel like will do the best job for Marion County and helping to make this city a safer place for all of the residents that live in Indianapolis and Speedway and Beech Grove and Lawrence and all of the other areas of this county. We owe that to each other. So please, in November, when you vote, or if you are voting early, please make sure that you are truly evaluating these candidates and not just pulling the lever of the party that you belong to. Thank you so much for joining me today on this podcast. Once again, I want to thank Joe Garrison from the North Shadeland Alliance for joining me today. And this is Reverend Charles Harrison, and this has been Real Talk. Join me again next time as I bring to you more real talk about the real issues that affect our communities here in Indianapolis and across the country. Be sure to follow and subscribe to this podcast and share it on Facebook and Twitter. Thank you so much for joining me again, and I pray that you have a blessed and an awesome day.
This is Real Talk with Reverend Charles Harrison.
Be sure to like and subscribe to this podcast.
And be sure to check out other great podcasts on the All Indiana Podcast Network.
Online now at allindianapodcast.com.